up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Don't Give Up the Ship podcast. This is episode 77, and this is another Ask the Chief, Rev 6, if you can believe it, where Chief Bob and I do what Chief Bob and I do. It's actually been weeks at this point since I recorded this, so as I'm recording the intro outro anyway. And so, I mean, we went all over the place, and there was a lot of like things he had going on, things I had going on, things were going on in the world, all kind of mashed together. If you're familiar at all with the prior episodes, you know exactly what I mean. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Check it out. Yeah, like I want to just repeat everything I just said because this is what we do every time. But,
I'll pretend to be surprised.
I cursed, yeah. But that was the chat too. I didn't even footnote that correctly. But, so yeah, like, so the first, it was like with the test up guys, I told you we were doing that podcast, and that's what he was asking me, like, how, when chiefs communicate, it was like the E5 and below are having a really hard time because the E6 and above, because they were like, a ton of the first classes were supermoto because they wanted to make chief. And so they were acting the way they thought they should, which alienated all the E5 and below. And then the Chiefs were already Chiefs and were still alienating the E5 and below because they didn't know how to communicate with them in a way that like the E5 and below would actually receive and that was meaningful in any kind of a way and would build trust and all the things that we talk about all the time. And then like, but they thought that they had to like play this caricature, like this idea in their head that they had of what a Chief's supposed to be. Right. And then he was asking me like, why is that? And I was like, because they like, you got to look at the problem behind the problem. Like, so your problem is they're not communicating with you. Well, why are they not communicating well? Like, why can't that chief talk to you like you're a human being? And it's just like, not that there aren't some out there, obviously, but like you were just describing a minute ago, like the way that you approach teaching that course is like, we're all going to figure it out together. Like, I'm not God, I'm not some like oracle of radio chiefness. I'm just a dude. Yeah. And so like same thing with that email too that I got recently where this guy was like, we were talking about like he listened to Warped and then that Spin the Yarn I did recently about the idea about the idea that the mess is like kind of lost its way and that the idea of what a chief is in our heads even is like warped, you know, go figure. Puns. And then so I was just explaining to him in the email like, okay, but why can't they do that? And so like same thing with him, he was like describing that like, yeah, it becomes like an ideology or a religion almost, and so they get defensive when questioned and it's part of their identity because they're insecure with who they are or because whatever. I'm like, yeah, but why are they that way? Like, why are they functioning immaturely and acting crazy and can't communicate and whatever? It's like, why? And it's because they've never been taught. Like there's never, and I always regress or whatever, loop back around or whatever to leadership development and education. Like it never happened. So these people don't know how to communicate with you on a human level. They don't know how to like straddle the line of like, yes, I'm your superior. And yes, there's certain like boundaries we need to maintain, but also I can like just be a normal human being with you and like talk to you like a human being. And I can like emote and like express that I care about you in a meaningful way instead of being like a robot or like pretending that I can't do that because I got to maintain that boundary. It's like, that's not even a little true. You know what I mean?
There's it's funny because there's things in the Navy are very regional as much as they should be like universal. Or like the Navy intends them to be universal, but they end up becoming very regional, right? So out here we've been good with teaching. We just certified a bunch of people to do the NLDC, the leadership course.
NLEC stuff. Right? It's NLEC ELD. Yeah. I signed up for a facilitator course next month. I'm pretty pumped.
So we just got not too long ago. We got a bunch of people that got certified to teach it. We have 3 people in our area that are certified as train the trainers, right?
See, I reached out about that and they said that only NLEC staff is allowed to go to that course now. So I'm going to go to a class somehow. I don't know if there's NLEC staff where I'm going, but I'm going to go to a class to be a command facilitator, meaning I can teach all the courses. Like I can facilitate
Right.
all the levels of the
But
courses.
you can't certify
I can't,
somebody else to do
I
it.
can't birth more trainers, which I think is stupid. That was the whole point, is like, I wanted me and the SEL here to go with me so that we would have 2 people that could then start creating facilitators. And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, do you not want this to work? Like I need somebody to certify me to teach leadership stuff, obviously.
Right. And so like one of the guys in my office, it was kind of funny because we were both scheduled to go to it. And then I had my class, got one of my courses that is taught 3 times a year, happened to be the same time. So I had to back out of it. But I already had like my binder printed out, because the way you register, you have to print out the whole binder full of material, all that jazz. So I did all that, and then I couldn't go, so I unenrolled, and then I just handed that dude my binder of everything and said, have fun. So he went to it, right? And like, so he's on the hook, he's teaching it, which is fine, because as much as I wanted to go through it for my own information, the downside is like, I spread myself pretty thin where I'm at, right? I just constantly think like, oh, I can do that. Right. And then eventually I realize like stuff just
probably a good thing.
Off. Yeah. So in the long run, I'm kind of glad. It's probably for the better that I didn't go, but I will still go at some point, either just as a student or as being able, the next time they do a train the trainer, I'll show up to that just so that I have it under my belt so that I know what's going on. But it's interesting listening to him, because he's described the whole thing. And obviously I looked through all the material and all that jazz. I've got all the paperwork for it. And it's, I don't know what I expected, but it's not at all. I just thought there would be more like, it would be like more Navy focused or something. I don't know. I have no idea what I expected. But as I looked through it, it was very much like, this is generic training that could literally apply to anything.
Good. I haven't gone through any of the material. I expected to be let down again. So I'm like, I didn't have high expectations, but I have heard good things from people that have gone to the courses.
So at our chief, we have like bi-weekly chief meetings, right? And our DMC at the end of, we do like the quick, whatever, everybody talks about whatever they got to talk about. And then at the end of it, he does like a training piece to it, because one of the things that we don't really do, to your point, is like chief training. Of like, obviously you have the season, you have all that jazz, but once somebody makes it, there, a lot of times it just stops, and it's like, you'll figure it out, right?
There's a whole curriculum on, and I'm trying to remember where I found it, and they might have discontinued it. It was either like on the like War College website or like My Navy portal, where you go for the leadership stuff or something. But there was like a bunch of zip files. I have them on my H drive.
The chief one doesn't
chief training, like it's like mess training. But then the chief course that you're thinking of maybe is like, that's going to be the way I'm understanding it. It doesn't totally exist yet. And even when it does, my understanding is that NLEC is going to come teach that. I think it's not going to be like, it's not going to be like somebody like me after I become a facilitator.
Well, so there's like a course that you would go through. When you make E4, 5, and 6.
Right.
They're creating one for 7.
For chiefs. Yeah. Yep.
And
which is awesome.
But right now they're certified to, like the dude that's in my office teaches, he's certified to teach the 4, 5, and 6 one, which is like foundational, intermediate and advanced, I think. Anyways,
it is,
right. It's a 4, 5, 6 class. I don't know why they got to come up with a crazy name. Just call it 4, 5, 6. And then, but they made a point of like, you're not that he's not certified to teach the 7 version. It just doesn't exist yet. I don't know how that'll roll out once it does, but
I think they're shooting themselves in the foot a little bit with the way that they're doing this facilitator crap. Because even before COVID, they couldn't keep enough facilitators to make more facilitators certified. Because originally you could get master, it's called like master naval leadership development course or whatever. It's like the one where you can make facilitators. And initially they were doing like area CMCs or COBs. Like there was a couple poster COBs sitting on shorter. So they would do those guys. Initially they could get certified to make facilitators. and there was like 2 people that did it, but then their qual lapsed somehow or something, and then they couldn't make more, and I don't know why, and it probably was because they went to this no NLEX staff has to do it. And I'm like, but there's no NLEX staff here. So it's like, what are we doing? It's like they're making it harder to roll out than they need to, because all I need to, like, I could learn on the internet. All I need to learn is the structure. Because even if you look at, like, even if there were prereqs, like, I've got the instructor qual, I've got my MTS, like, I've been doing this forever. Oh, by the way, I'm a Master Chief. Like, come on. Like, I don't need to learn. Thanks, man. It's still real weird. Like, when people, my chop goes out of my way to call me Master Chief 9 times on every phone call, and it freaks me out. But I don't need you to teach me leadership things, which is kind of, I'm contradicting myself a little bit. So, like, yeah, maybe on a large scale, maybe we do, but like, there's people out there that you could just be like, okay, you're going to be a facilitator. Maybe they're being tight-fisted about it for the exact reasons that I'm always complaining about on this podcast, is like, they want to teach the leadership stuff and be like, no, this is how we want it done and all that stuff. And that's actually kind of great. It just feels like they're making it harder, like a little harder than it needs to be, to get people certified as facilitators and actually get the course rolled out. Based on the communications I've had recently, where I've been trying to get certified, because I signed up for one, and I'm going to have to travel like greater than 50 miles to get to this class too, which I think is ridiculous. But it is what it is. It's the only one that's local-ish. So I'm going to drive forever and get a hotel room with another guy, and we're going to go to the class. But, and then there's not another one for a while. So it's like there's going to be 2 on the whole base, I think, unless there's some other people that are trying to create one locally and do like a local convening, which is cool. I didn't know that was happening until I signed up for the other one. And I was like, whatever, I'll just go to the one I'm planning on going to. Well, that was a lot easier for me to get travel money than it is other people, which shouldn't be real either, but that's another discussion for another time. But, so I'll get the facilitator class done, but it seems like it should be more available. Like, what? I don't understand what's taking so long to man up the NLEX staff on all these bases, even with COVID. You know what I mean? Like, if we're going to put a det here and put a det there, it's been over a year.
Let's
go.
So I told you earlier, we have 3 people that are certified to do the train the trainer.
Yeah.
Originally it was 2, and the last time they did a course, they trained 1 dude, right? So one of the dudes, I've known him for a decade. Awesome dude, but he also is retiring. He goes on terminal in like November, December. Like literally in like 2 to 3 months. Then you have our CMC, which it kind of makes sense busy. When they said like who it was, right? When they said like knowing him, it was like, okay, well that checks.
Yeah.
And then there's one other guy that we had at the command. He was at the command forever. Now he's on a boat in the area. So he's still in the area. But while he was here, I thought he just was in charge of like some in-rate stuff. And it didn't register like how often he traveled and all that. But he traveled like literally probably the entire Eastern Seaboard.
Yeah.
And all he did was show up to areas and teach that course, and then like try to certify people. So he was like,
that's great.
At the time, he was one of 2 people. One was our CMC and one was this one random chief. And his whole job was to travel all over the Eastern Seaboard. He was in DC a lot, and he was constantly just like teaching people how to train this. So like, I only say that as somebody seems to be making an effort. Like they're trying to do that, but there's just so few people, right? That it's always a slow rolling start because that guy is one person who's he's all over the place. He can only do so much. And then,
but who certified the people that are making the master facilitator people? Like, it's like, it was a bunch of CMCs in a room that read the curriculum and said, now we know things. And you know what I mean? And now we can bless people to be master. Well, like, I doubt there was any course or whatever that they went to. They're just high level CMCs that went to the Senior Enlisted Academy. And so they're just like, you're good. And that's okay.
I asked one of them that. And from the most part, it was less going through the course, because that's basically what it is, right? You sit through the course. but it's while you're going through it, you're going through a specialized version of almost like you're on the other side of that two-way mirror and you're watching what's going on. And you go, this is when you need to say this. This is when you need to interject this. This is the point that you're driving home. So you have to have somebody go through the course and then you have to have them like watch the way it's taught so that you catch on to what you're supposed to say. Right. Same with most any other course that you would teach.
Yeah.
But like that just takes time. And
I
don't
know
with you, from my small circle that I work and live in, right? Like time is not exactly a thing that we have a lot of.
I'm probably underestimating the impact of COVID on it too. Cause like I knew it was going to like come to a screeching halt as soon as all this happened. And I just thought it would, I like detailing people to a location to do a thing. I'm like, we could have done that. Right. And then those people are able to teach the facilitator, a command facilitator course. So,
but that rate doesn't exist. You know what I mean?
But the
like nobody's doing that.
It's not a rate, but like,
no, but my point is that means you're taking away from a rate. And with as undermanned as I feel like most rates are recently.
Okay. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be a submariner. So there's definitely rates that have surplus. So,
but I mean, across the Navy there are, but I'm just saying that like,
I'm with you.
I feel like this submarine Navy can't be the only portion that's feeling
not at all
garbage manning.
Yeah. Right.
So like it takes the right person in the right place at the right billet at the right time.
Fair point.
It's not as like we don't have this massive surplus just laying around somewhere that.
Hey, you got a crusty old mass chief in Washington State that's looking to teach leadership. I'm just saying. Let's go.
Dude, speaking of crusty and old, when I read that, so I saw an email. So you posted recently the chief guidance that came out from McPhon,
Well, so I gooned it up and posted the wrong link, just assuming that if they sent it out to all these CMCs that they had updated the website. Whoops. I'm a little mad at them for making me look silly, but I also should have checked. But yeah, I posted it as pictures.
As an IT, I definitely laughed because the link that you posted says 2020 in like 2 different places.
I know. I'm dumb. So, IR cook, I burn stew. Leave me alone.
Anyways, Chuck Wagon.
Yeah.
So
beanies and
weenies. But so I just got an email from ours that was the email that he sent out to the
command us. It's like the leadership. It goes to what they call it the MCPON's leadership mess. It's a bunch of like high level flag CMCs, and then it gets pushed down from there.
Anyways,
because I got it sent to me last year, the whole email that came with it, and
So his email that came with it though, which like it is what it is, right? It says like, hey, I'm sending you this attachment. Please put it out.
Disseminate.
And then a couple of motivating statements, and it is what it is, right? Nothing special. But what I thought was crazy to me is he said, in my 24th and final year in the Navy, and I went, yo, the
24? Wow.
That's what I said.
He's 12. I didn't know that. Wow.
I mean, good for him, right? Like,
yeah, hey, whatever.
But it's still
one that can't be right.
Yo, I know a lot of people that have been in for more than 24 years.
I've been in for 20. I could be the MCPON in 4 years. Like, what the heck is happening there? No, I'm about to Facebook stalk him and look for service stripes. I wonder if that's a typo. It's got to be 34. But continue.
In his email, he wrote, in my 24th and final year. And that's of all of the things that the MCPON says in this email, right? I froze just to stop and
let me go to his
good
website.
For him, man.
There's no way. That can't be possible.
From day one, that guy's been killing it. I guarantee he was an RPOC in boot camp.
You're probably right, but also that can't be real. It's got to be 34. No. It's got to be. I'm going to check the website, but continue. There's no way.
So, I don't know. No, that was the end of it. But one of the things that I wanted to tell you that I think is amazing that clicked a while ago. So I've told you a while ago, one of my dumb ideas for a podcast that I think is like my most reasonable idea that's not totally saturated and taken yet. Or it's, I don't know, it might be saturated. Every podcasting is saturated, but
yeah, he went to San Diego RTC in 1988. So not 24 years.
Typo I.
Hard typo. Yeah. All right. Sorry. Go ahead. Podcast ideas.
So one of the things that I thought was super intriguing was it's called the Dunning-Kruger curve.
Yeah. Dunning-Kruger effect. Dunning-Kruger
or
things.
chart, curve. Yeah. Effect, whatever. Right. So like the idea being, when you know a little bit about something, your confidence is super high. But then as you learn more about it, you realize you don't really know that much about it. And your confidence drops way off.
Sounds like the Chiefs mess. I'm just saying.
100%. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's literally like, and I started thinking about it and I was like, that's like,
us.
If it's 100% us. And that was one of the, like, I was sitting in that class, like I was telling you about, and I started off by telling everybody like, hey, I know what I know, but I'm conscious of like that theory or effect or whatever you want to call it. Like, I know that exists. And since then I've caught myself like, hey, I feel like I know what I'm talking about, but then I'm like, do I though? Or do I just know just enough that I think I know what I'm talking about?
Right.
And so that's kind of how I preface that class is like, hey, there's probably a lot that I definitely don't know about that you guys can 100% like teach this better than me or talk about things that are smarter than what I would talk about. And I definitely use that. If for no other reason than I need class engagement and time to drink coffee while they're talking.
Right.
But it's still like, it was an interesting effect. Like since I've thought about that, I've tried to be more aware of those times in like what I'm talking about. Like, do I really know what I'm talking? Like, am I really this confident because I actually know what I'm saying? Because, you know, obviously at some point you become like an expert in something and your confidence goes back up but it's still one of those, that
it's
middle,
interesting.
it's like an upside down bell curve basically.
Yeah. Cause I would think that too, that like, cause if you think like from the perspective of like submariners or like,
that we pride ourselves on being
like
experts in everything.
When you, but like, and we drill and train and like do all these things to become experts so that the water stays out of the people tank and we don't die. But like, you kind of, there's a certain, and it might be just cultural and not related to like your competence, right? Where it's just like, we're kind of a little arrogant too. And,
for sure.
But yeah, I kind of like what you were saying. What's interesting too is because that's another footnote. You're significantly behind me in like years and experience to the point where I would think, well, I'm just saying like, you're like, 5 or 6 years behind me, something like that. That's not nothing. It's 25% of a career.
Significant. All right.
Whatever. You know, my point being, I'm trying to make you feel younger than you are. All right. Hey, just because I age like George Clooney doesn't mean I'm not old.
You're like maybe a year
salty.
You can't be more than 2 years older than me.
I'm 38 as of yesterday. Happy birthday to me.
Yeah. I told you. So I'm not saying it again.
That's fine.
Well, I turned 37 in 2 months.
Well, that's just because you joined the Navy late though. Because how many years do you have in? How many years do you have in the Navy?
14 and a half.
14. So you're 6 years behind me. 5.5. I'll give you that.
Navy years.
You're 5.5 in Navy years. My point is,
years, though.
Whatever, man. And maybe that's why that you are where you are. Can I compliment you now? Shut up. I was going to say that I wouldn't expect you being where you are in your progression, but it might be because of life years that you are where you are is like that. I would expect, I was linked to the concept to experience, right? That the more time I spent, because I'm a chief at 9.5 years and I've been a chief longer than I've been a blue shirt at this point. And so I linked it to like the more time I got to do this, the more things I figured out and the more I learned and whatever. So that's why I got to a point where there was some self-actualization and just the ability to step back and be like, maybe I don't know anything, or like maybe I'm at least open to listening to other people's ideas and being proven wrong and all those things. And it's not like a hit to my ego and I'm not going to get defensive and all those other things. But it was more for me linked to experience, where I think that like it really probably is just I've learned a lot too. Like I've spent a lot of time learning, and so it wouldn't really matter. I think I lost Bob.
saying something about how awesome I am for being
That's
in the Navy
not what
for
was
like
happening
6
at all. We
minutes.
lost internet, but well, Bob lost internet. I don't lose internet. Now I'm probably going to.
I don't understand how either as an IT.
I know, right? You'd think. I mean, the cook chief can keep his internet up, so
I'm literally
and I'm hardwired too for that reason.
And I have a Wi-Fi, like the Wi-Fi antenna and the Wi-Fi router, which is also hardwired, is like
right next to the
6 inches from each other.
Yeah, and I don't like. I usually keep the Wi-Fi shut off because I think the computer works better that way. Like on my computer, I shut it off because it's hardwired, but yeah, it shouldn't be an issue.
Maybe like an actual IT can tell me. So here's the thing, right? So back, like my main point is, and less than, or I don't know, maybe it's related to what you're saying, but back to that Dunning-Kruger effect is even though I may not have, I'm not some super fancy Master Chief that's been in for 20 years, but I do know what I know, and what I don't know, I fake it, like just like everything else in the Navy, right? Fake it till you make it. The statement that you always hear on the boat is like, don't let knowledge get in the way of
qualifications.
Yeah. Which is crazy to me, but because that's what we tell everybody.
Mostly.
But then as soon as somebody screws something up that they're qualified to do, we just hang them for it and tell them that you were qualified that, so you should have known.
Right, and then they do upgrades and
But my point is, like, I gradually feel more confident in my points of view on things based on successful people that I see who have similar points of view. So what I mean is, like, I'll have my thoughts on something.
Right.
And I don't know, like I'll look at something, I complain a lot like everybody else. The big difference is I've just learned when to complain and who to complain to, as opposed to everybody and all the time when I was more junior. So like there's a time and a place, but regardless, like I'll have my thoughts on something, and I'm sometimes, maybe not all the time, but like I may not always be the most popular opinion. Like I don't have the room behind me when I have my thoughts on something, right? And so part of my thoughts for a long time were like, maybe I'm just not doing it right. Maybe I'm just not getting it. Maybe something's not clicking, whatever it is. And then as I go on, though, I find other successful people who have very similar or the same or whatever mind thought or thought process. And I'm like, maybe it's not me. Maybe it's the children.
Yeah.
Wrong.
Define successful people. Like, who do you mean?
In my small world, right? Like I see other CMCs, other people that are getting picked up for things, right? Like
that's what I thought you meant, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not
like celebrities or like
no,
or like I saw somebody on TV that thought, I thought you meant that, but I just wanted to make sure so that people listening would understand.
No, well, and so then there's others, like, so every once in a while I'll go in this weird stint where you go down like YouTube rabbit holes, right? And last season, I don't know how I didn't know about him beforehand, right? But what's his name? Simon
Sinek.
Yeah. Somebody turned me onto that because me and you had a conversation. We were talking about like one of the common things that everybody hates on Chiefs for, right? And I can't blame them. I laugh at the same stuff, but like, why do they have like special parking, or why do they have whatever, right? And you could stretch and try to find some sort of justification for why they need, like, just using special parking as an example, right? But in reality, like, it's not that person that deserves it. It's not whatever, right? And so that guy has a really good speech. If anybody's interested, it's like really, the video is really short. It's like
the styrofoam cup
3 to 5 minutes. The styrofoam cup one, right?
That's a great video.
And so my CMC told me, I brought that up to him, and I was talking to him, and I'm like, what's your take on this? Like, why do we get anything special, right? And so he told me to look up the styrofoam cup video. So I looked it up, and I was like, oh shit, like a lot of this makes sense now. Like, it's not right. And then once you realize that, then, like, I don't know, a lot of other things kind of clicked with me, but my point was more of, when you like I have this idea of what I think somebody should be. And then I see successful people within the military that have similar mindsets. And so I'm like, okay, well, it is possible to do good things and have a similar mindset as to what I have.
Yeah.
Obviously, I need to be refined a little bit. And then I see like this guy, like Simon Sinek, who just does leadership talks and like he makes his money off of speeches, right? And like he knows what he's talking about clearly. Um, and a lot of his speeches, oddly enough, have to do with the Navy, but I don't think he was ever in. I don't think it has to do with that.
He's done a lot.
He worked around Navy people.
Yeah, he's done a lot with like SEALs and stuff, and then he's done talks at the Naval Academy, and yeah, I think it's just people like grabbed him and he went and did speeches, and yeah, it turned into like kind of a niche. Like I know, like he's super famous, and a lot of people know about him, and he sells a lot of books. Yeah. So I don't think it's limited to that, but he has done a lot with the Navy.
No, but there's like a couple of other speeches I've seen where he's referenced like some admiral that he's dealt with a bunch, and that's what part of that speech has to deal with. Somebody that was
it was like a defense
military to some extent.
Yeah, Secretary of Defense or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the undersecretary, which whatever, that's some made up thing. Somebody that makes way more than me that does political things. But regardless, I look at people like that and I'm like, oh, well, these are all successful people that have similar mindsets of what I have. They verbalize it much better and more polished than what I would say, right? But I see those things and I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'm not crazy with what I'm doing, right? Which just increases my Dunning-Kruger effect. Like I don't actually know what I'm talking about, right? I just go up the ladder of like, clearly I know what I'm talking about because somebody else agrees with
that
me,
I'm smart,
right?
Yeah.
Even though there might be probably it could even be outnumbering me as far as people that completely disagree with me that are equally successful, right?
Yeah.
And there's no one way to skin a cat. But it's more of one of those, you fake it till you make it, don't let knowledge get in the way of qualls. Don't let, but it's very much of the same way we make Chiefs, right? We tell everybody like throughout the Chiefs season, you talk several times about, at least a couple of times in different lessons is like, tell me about somebody that you like or you don't like, a chief that inspired you or a chief that you hated or whatever. Right. And what did you learn from them? Blah, blah, blah. And with that, I look back at like, I've always just thought of like if this is how I feel about things, right? At this point, I got it 14 years isn't went to boot camp in 88. Right.
Yeah.
But still the point is like, I'm not drastically changing who I am at this point in my career. So then it's like, okay, well, how do I polish this? Because clearly there are people who are successful with similar mindsets. They've just found a way to polish that up and be successful doing that, right? Yeah. Not everybody is the same way. We don't want that, yada, yada, yada. So then I just look at, okay, I need to polish up the way I present my complaints. How do I do that without like staying true to myself? So when something comes across, like I actually believe what I'm trying to say to people.
Right.
And then is that a successful path forward? Like whatever my thought is, like, am I just straight swimming upstream or am I just not the popular kid?
Well, what's weird is
not being the popular kid, but
I find myself
a lot of what we do is just mimicking what somebody else told us or what we've heard that we're like, you latch onto, right? Everything is just,
but yeah, it's like after an analysis happens and you're like, oh, I really like that. Or I think that works or whatever. Cause like I've found that at the beginning, like when I was a baby chief and even an LPO, I was more looking, cause I feel like kind of Dunning-Kruger or Dunning-Kruger. I think I said Kruger. I don't know I don't know what just happened. Whatever. I think I had a stroke. So I said Dunning-Kruger or esque is like at the very beginning of my career, I thought I knew everything because everybody does. Like I was a second class that obviously knew everything and was ready to take over the world. And then when I became an LPO, I had that like, oh God, I don't know anything at moment where I started to like, then that was more like I was looking around the room trying to see what everybody else was doing and be like, am I doing this right?
Yeah.
And then a lot of my like initial Chiefs tours like that too. And I had a lot of awesome people teach me luckily, but then I got into this moment, and I that's what's weird is I think a lot of Chiefs do. I had this moment where I was like, something's wrong here. Like, this isn't how this is supposed to be. And that's when I've always had that questioning attitude where I challenge everything all the time. And so it's almost like I started applying some of that like second class skepticism and just questioning attitude to what was happening now. And I've said to a lot of, I've had a lot of second class and first classes that reminded me of me, were super mouthy and like just calling everything, like calling everything as they saw it. And like, they were, a lot of times they were right. And I would tell them, like, for somebody that I had to talk to about their attitude and the way they approach certain things, I also would generally, and one of them is a senior chief right now, and she's awesome. One of my instructors, she was a first class when she left. And I told her when she left, and we didn't really, I don't think she liked me then. Like, I think it was one of those, like, I don't think she understood what I was trying to do there, where I knew she was going to be a good chief. But, and I told her,
more common than people realize, though.
For sure. And I told her at her going away thing, we did like quarters, did her end of tour, and I everybody kind of, if they wanted to say something. And I just said, I'm like, that your at thing, that like that attitude that people have such a problem with a lot of the times, is going to serve you really well when you're a chief. And I'm confident you'll be one very soon. But it was like that, your willingness to just push back and question everything and not take any crap from it. Like, you're going to be the best advocate ever for your sailors. Like, you're already doing it now. And she did a lot of good things too, but she would often find herself in moment, and so did I, like in those moments where she said something that was a little too much for a first class that was in the position she was in, and she was saying it to the wrong person. And often, like, she would say it to me, and it's like, I'm not going to yell at her. Like, I'm going to sit her down and be like, all right, let's talk, and we're going to work through that. But yeah, it was like, I think that I started applying that, and even more so now, like, where I'm just like, no, that's not supposed to be like that. And I was often the, like you were saying, like the lonely guy in the room, where I'm the only one saying, no, this is not supposed to be this way. And it was weird because I was just so bullheaded about it. I'm like, I'm not, which my parents will not be shocked by at all. But I wouldn't let it go. I was just like, no, this is not how this is supposed to be. And I did it a lot on my last boat when I first got into that mess, because it was a dumpster fire. And like, I wasn't the only one that knew it. And eventually, like, my CO and XO pulled me aside, and they're like, oh, thank God you're here. Like, here's what we see too. Yeah. And we thought it was just us. And it was kind of a similar conversation, but I was like, no, this is a dumpster fire. This should not be happening this way. Started freaking out. And so they started leaning heavily on me. And then we got a new cob and a bunch of new department chiefs. And then it just like took a big turn in the right direction. That's
like a good, like, example of something that I've kind of learned recently with it is if I'm in a huge group, I'm not the one that will like stand up and tell everybody else in the room that they're idiots and they're wrong. But I'll lean over to the dude next to me and be like,
yeah, it depends.
Everybody here is stupid, right? Like, I'm not the one to vocalize that often.
Yeah.
But I 100% have that opinion. And if I talk to people one-on-one, like 100%, I will do nothing but complain loudly.
I'm the guy that you lean over and say something to, and then I'd stand up and be like, what the, no. Like, it depends on what it is, but there's definitely a time where, like, when it crosses a certain threshold, I'm going to jump out of my chair and like lose my mind.
Right. But what I mean is that, like, I've slowly learned that like, I'll see something happen and I'm like, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? This doesn't make sense. But I won't say anything right away.
Right.
And I'll wait. And I'm like, maybe I'm missing something. I'll think about it. And then we'll start doing it.
Yeah.
And then, for argument's sake, like a week later, it'll come back and they'll be like, oh, we shouldn't have done that. This is actually what we should have done.
Right.
And I'm like, that's what I was thinking the whole time.
Well, the danger.
And that's when I go like,
yeah,
I should have said something right off the bat. Like I should have just spoke my mind.
Yeah. And you can ask questions in that moment to like clarify it and confirm that it is what you think, and then say, well, what about this? I
think generally my problem, at least personally, right, is that I have my initial reaction,
right,
and then in my head, and I think like, all right, this is my initial reaction, but like, does this make sense?
What do I not know? Yeah.
Yeah. What don't I know? Is this like some like angry E5 in me that's like angry about something unjustifiably?
Right.
Am I like just complaining to complain because that's what I do? Or does this like, maybe this is a legitimate complaint that like somebody, not even that I'm the first one to think of it. I'm not even remotely trying to say that I'm the first guy to complain about something or think that something is wild.
Right.
Just that I'm the one that's like willing to throw myself on the line.
Yeah.
You know, I'm willing to put myself at the mercy of the court by saying, hey, I appreciate what you're trying to get done, but I think you're an idiot.
Yeah.
And this is what should happen, right? Because every like good mess needs that
Right.
person, right? And I don't think that always, and it's not even just a good mess, right? Like every command needs that
Yeah,
person
for
or
sure.
people, right? Because there's definitely times where like, because of that, and I don't know if it's because of necessarily people that I work with now, or if it's because I imagine that who I am works for me
Yeah.
now. Like the hypothetical me as an E5 or an E6 is working for me now. And I don't know that they do. I don't know that I have any people at this moment that are quite like me. Maybe I do, but we'll come up with some plan, like some radical plan on how we're going to change something big to, you know, solve some magical problem. And we go through it. Like I overthink it 12 different ways.
Right.
I'll print out like 3 different COAs on a chart and I look at it like, does this make sense before I present this? Because somebody like in my head, I'm sitting in the back of the room like, this guy's an idiot. What is he doing? And so like I want to make sure like I quiet the me in the back of the room when I present anything. And I'm never gonna do that entirely, right? But it's interesting because there's that, like I said, the further I go, the more people you meet, the more people you see be successful in the Navy or do something that you want to do, whether or not it's like objectively a higher pay grade or whatever. You see somebody and you're like, yeah, that like you're a good person for that position.
Right.
And if you're able to do that, and I think like you do, then that means that I'm able to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm not crazy then, you know, like Tony, right? Like he just got picked up for command senior chief.
Yep.
He was on here before, right? As like the previous detailer. So I'm not like totally diming out.
Oh, he doesn't care.
People, whatever. He really doesn't. But he's a dude that like, it's funny, right? Because throughout the season, they told us to pick like who our favorite chief was, right?
Yeah.
Somebody that we've met. And I picked him, which is weird because usually it's some guy. It's like, oh, it's my first chief, or this some whoever, like somebody in the days of yore. It's not somebody that's currently in your mess that you're talking about usually. But he was a dude that like I always respected him because he always just said, like he didn't have that like, oh, I know this might affect my rankings. He just said what he was on his mind.
You're right.
And you know, whatever happens. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, I always looked at that as like, I really like the idea of just actually saying whatever I'm thinking.
And I wonder if he said it like when he first made chief, because like he was definitely, as a first class when I knew him, I mean, I've known him the whole time, I guess, but like when I worked with him, he was definitely vocal. But like, and I wonder if once he made chief, if he was the same kind of vocal, and he was probably pretty comfortable with those guys. So he may have been, but like, I know when I went into the mess and I stayed on the same submarine. I definitely like was a sit back, watch, wait, listen, like try to figure out what's going on, read the room, whatever.
Right.
And it was just because it was such a top heavy mess. And I was really intimidated by a lot of those guys back then. And I just didn't want to screw anything up. But then as time went on, I definitely became the guy in the room that was like saying the things that, that no one else wanted to say,
but nobody else would say.
Right. And I found myself more and more like pushing myself too. Cause like, I don't want to be the one that takes the face punch, but like I will, if I have to. Like, I feel like there's a thing that needs to be said bad enough. And a lot of times it was me just asking questions, and certain times it was like, oh, that's a really great question. And other times, like I've probably told the stories, but like there's been stuff where like I just said a thing and I had a CO that just like blew a gasket and started destroying me in the Chiefs course in front of all the Chiefs. And I'm just like, what? I was like confused. And I was like, sorry, sir, poor choice of words. Like, and it was because I said the thing we were talking about, I said, I guarantee they're not planning on doing this way because of my experience, whatever else. Okay, can I guarantee it while I'm underwater on nuclear power? Of course not. I was clearly exaggerating, but he just decided that was like this huge egregious infraction that I used the word guarantee, and he lost his mind. And I was sitting there, I'm like,
not a fan of hyperbole.
I'm like, what did I do? Like, I understand. I'm like, okay, you don't like the word guarantee, my bad, poor choice of words. And I said it, and I'm like, sorry, sir, poor choice of words. And he just like had a meltdown and then walked out and slammed the door. I'm like, okay, transients kill, number one. Number two, why are you flipping out for no reason? Because like I didn't. Okay, I get it. I can't guarantee anything because duh. Like I think that's implied. So like I was just using a word and using hyperbole to express my confidence in the fact that I was right, and it turns out I was. Shocking. So I'm like, I mean, it was weird, but it was like there were times where that would happen too, and I'm just like, it is what it is. Because my Cobb, like, he didn't like it either, and I'd tell him all the time when he was being an idiot. And it's like sometimes he would accept it a lot. He was a lot better about accepting it when no one was around. But if I questioned him in front of people, he would like snap at me, even though he knew I was right. And I'm like, well, part of the game. Yeah, I guess this is what we're doing. Like, okay.
But so that's another interesting point, though, is that like people assume rank makes you right in a weird way, right?
Yeah.
So like,
or you at least have to appear that, yeah.
Well, that's like the stupid old joke, right? Of like you see floating around every once in a while of like rule number 1, Chiefs always right, right? And which is funny because like rule number 1, Chiefs right like 60% of the time, maybe 55.
I mean, yeah,
but depending on the person, right?
Yeah.
But like
it's a scale.
And again, that's
it's a gradient.
Yeah, it's a bell curve.
Yeah, there's a spectrum.
But like the idea is like when you see COs, you're like, people just assume like, well, you're like the captain of
you have to
whatever.
know everything, right? Like
you've got to, and then you look at it and you're like, oh,
just a person
might actually also be fallible, and then like that's a weird realization. And then you realize like, hey, not that I don't respect what you say or do or whatever, I'm still going to do what you want. Like you are still the name on the line. However, I still just think that you're wrong, right? And then a lot of that's just tacked on how you deal with it and whatever. And there's all the politics involved with that. But it's one of those, we have a chief that struggles a lot with at our command. And we feel really bad for him. We kind of took him under our wing and we're like his only fans in his corner, right?
That's
Everybody
good.
else is kind
weird
of
choice of words,
off.
but that's good.
It
See
is,
what I did there?
We,
no? Okay, keep moving.
We are, somebody will like make a constant like, oh, well, of course you screwed it up because it's who he is. And it's like, hey, listen, man, like he's doing, and then we have to get in there and like start defending him about a lot of things. And luckily with where me and the other guy in my office, with where we are at in the command, us defending him carries some weight, which is good for him. Kind of frustrating that that's what it takes.
Right.
But, the general, not that I'm some all knowing, whatever, far from the senior guy in the command, but, we've done enough good things that people are like, okay,
let's just call it what it is. We all know you're CMC's favorite. So by virtue of you being CMC's right-hand man, when you say something, it carries more weight.
I wish. No, I definitely don't. I do see things similar to him very often. However, I'm by no means the only, nor the highest performing, whatever, right? Like if I were to rank our quarters today, I would.
Yeah, but you're
maybe
not
be
ranking
in our top
them.
5.
You're not ranking them. You're an unqualified evaluator of yourself. So
agreed.
I
would put myself in the top 5, but I would definitely not say the top 3.
Okay, number 1 MP.
No, I think definitely not.
I think it's cool that you guys are actually handling that way, because that's not normally how that happens. Like when you start describing it, I'm like, oh, here we go, another story of us eating our own, like.
No, like this is one that we very much like, hey man, this guy's not an idiot, right?
Yeah.
Like he had to make chief for a reason.
Right.
The hard part is the way the Navy is you make chief based off of your performance as a first class. As a first class, they look at technical expertise. Did you, right? Like everything is a checkbox.
Yeah.
Did you qualify this? Did you stay in this position? Were you an LPO? And did you qualify whatever you're supposed to qualify?
Yeah.
If so, then objectively you should probably be ranked fairly high.
Yeah.
And all those things combined means you are now qualified to make chief.
I mean,
so as soon as you make chief, right, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily a good leader. It just means you are a good technician, depending on the rate.
I mean,
and so we have
it's a quota driven system. That's the rub. So like there's definitely people that get selected that, and I don't want to say like they shouldn't have, but like maybe like they weren't quite ready yet, but because it was a big year, they find themselves there a little earlier than is probably ideal, and then you find them.
But the point is like whether that's the reasoning or not, right? There's still somebody's chief.
Yep.
And so our point is, we talk to guys a lot of times, like sometimes his division will try to make like a backhanded comment or something about him, like, well, like he's kind of an idiot. And we're like, hey man,
stop.
He's clearly not.
Well,
however, to become a chief, you don't necessarily have to be a great leader.
Yeah.
And which is why, like in my head, I want to be my goal is to be a senior chief, because I look at senior chiefs as somebody who has proven themselves as a leader, not as a good technician, not as a good whatever.
Right.
And because like the number one criteria that you look at as a chief is your leadership ability and blah, blah, blah. Right. And so in my head, it's like, that's what a good chief is, a senior chief.
Right.
Which is weird and messed up. Right. But, because you're all chiefs.
Right.
And whatever. Well, but making chief not that I'm trying to detract from it.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good leader.
Right.
You're good at what your job is at that point, and then they give you the next rank, and then you have to now do that. So whether or not you like how well you perform as a chief tells me more than the fact that you made chief. But that was why I was saying like that when I look at people that do well, that have similar mindsets, like one of the dudes, he made chief 2 years after me. Or a year, something like that, right? So like whatever, theoretically he's junior to me, or he's a chief and we're all chiefs and there's no such thing as rank in the chief's quarters and blah, blah, blah. But which is kind of true, but not true. But reality though, like I look at him and I'm like, yo, I want to be like that guy. Even though he's junior to me, he's been in half the amount of time that I've been in. Like, I don't even know if he's definitely not a gold crow of anything at this point. But I look at him, I'm like, yo, that dude's killing it.
Yeah.
And he's doing it well. He's doing it right. He's putting in the work. He's got the people behind him. He like his opinions I agree with.
Yeah.
And he's one of the guys running the season with me this year. But it's funny because like, even though he's technically junior to me, he's still a dude that I look up to, like 100% should outrank me. But I look at him and I'm like, that's a dude that like, yeah, I want to be like that guy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if he's not even eligible, like, sure, I didn't put on a star this year. I by no means was expecting to, but he wasn't even eligible to.
Yeah.
And so it seems weird that like, I would look up to a dude who's junior to me.
I mean, yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know. Like maybe it's weird, maybe it's not, but in my head, it's like, that's not what I'm supposed to do. Right. I'm supposed to look up to.
Yeah, whatever. You're just identifying positive traits in a person, really. Like,
right. But it's just one of those, like I said earlier, like I look at people that are successful at what they do. And of course you, just like any other echo chamber and on Facebook and anywhere else, right. You latch onto the people that agree with you.
Yeah.
And so it's comforting for me to find people that I agree with.
Yeah.
That are also successful.
Right. Right.
Not necessarily like, yeah, I like that dude. Like he's got some good points that, ITS 3 that's in the corner that's like disgruntled and getting out of the Navy, right? Like,
I mean, they're valuable too.
Not that I don't disagree with those guys, but like the people that I look up to aren't necessarily like, they're not all just fleets. I'm not just like latching on to like, he's got 2 stars, so I love everything he says.
Yeah,
like,
you hate half of what I say. There's plenty of times where you
tell those people,
Before we get too far,
that,
before we get too far past it, I wanted to. So you mentioned earlier with the guy that's struggling, right? And like how you guys have to like advocate for him and defend him and try to help him get better and everything. Like I think about that a lot as far as like, so not just like the Chiefs that get into that are in the mess already, right? But also like, so we're about to select a bunch, about to go through the season. And so when I was reading through that season memo that came out, like one of the things that I thought was really interesting was that there's a line that's added that I'm going to just pretend in my mind that Mick Pond listens to this podcast and he stole it from me, but that's probably not what happened. He's probably just smarter than me. But yeah, he probably just learned some stuff from 1988 until now. But so it says the focus of our season is preparing our newest Chiefs to enter the mess, not screening them out. The Chief of Naval Personnel has already determined that they are authorized to wear the uniform of an E7. It is the process of enculturation and acceptance as a chief petty officer that makes what we do so incredibly valuable. So, and then he talks about like the command senior list leader in the mess being responsible and accountable for the quality of execution and making sure that each selectee is ready to enter the mess. And so like, that's the whole acceptance episode that I talked about from Teaching the Creed, where like I've literally stood in a final night, like acceptance moment where a whole bunch of chiefs are advocating for somebody to not be accepted. They're not ready. We're not accepting them. And the CMC, who at the time, like I'm still like, I wasn't super impressed.
God, I haven't had that yet.
Yeah. I wasn't super impressed with the guy, but he was right. And could have been a blind squirrel finding a nut, or it could have been him being a CMC and having a lot more time in the pond and just understanding the concept better. Because at the time I was really torn. It was a really weird scenario where I was like, I saw what they were seeing and I saw what they meant, where like they weren't ready, but like, why aren't they ready? They're not ready because we failed to do our job. Like and then I hadn't quite accepted the concept that like, well, they've already been selected. So we've already decided that they're ready to be a chief. So this process that we're going through during the chief season isn't a screening process. They've already been selected. So why are we acting like we get to filter out the bad ones? Like, no, the whole point of this is to prepare them to be a chief. Cause like you mentioned earlier, on whatever the pinning date is, and I usually say September 16th because I'm old, but like now it's all over the place. But whatever, on pinning day, they're wearing anchors, and to every junior sailor not wearing anchors, and to every officer in the Navy, they're chiefs. It doesn't matter if they're ready or not. So then you got like the guy that you're working with, it's like, he's a chief to a bunch of people, whether they take him seriously or think he's smart or good at his job or not, he's still a chief. And that like, it's the chief that they have, and it also reflects on us, and it's our job to make sure that person knows what they're doing and is successful and everything else. So it's like, that's one of the concepts that like drives me the most crazy. Is it's just like people in the mess, like we're sitting in the chief's quarters and they're complaining about another chief being a moron. It's like, okay, what are you doing to help him? Nothing. Okay, then shut up. You do your job. Like, go help that guy because he clearly needs the help. You know what I mean? It's just like, it drives me nuts, man.
So we looked at it as not even that, right? And I think one of the guys in our office may have said that more or less, right? Like whether or not you like it, his uniform is what it is.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to deal with it. The point that we looked at, because we deal with it all the time, because he's in the same office as us, even though it's more of a proximity thing.
Yeah.
But his division still comes in all the time. And like every once in a while, his division will come in and be like, well, I mean, you know who my chief is. Like, while they're looking for an answer for something, and we'll shut him down immediately.
Yeah.
But my thought is is less yelling at those instructors or whoever, because they're like trying to say something bad about their chief. And it's more of like, and one of the guys definitely goes hard, and he's got that kind of well, what advice, like, did you give him backup? Did you give him recommendations? Did you give him this? Did you give him that? Or are you just sitting here complaining
Right.
and thinking I'm going to jump on your team?
Right.
Because, like, I don't care how bad he's doing, he's still your chief.
Yeah.
And so what gets me is when other chiefs badmouth him.
That's
what bothers me is less of like, to your point of like, what are you doing to help him? But what bothers me is like, that dude still has a division sitting down the hall that still is waiting for an answer for him. So like, we can all sit around and just talk bad about this dude all we want, but that division still needs somebody to sign this chit. They still need an answer.
They still need a chief. Yeah. Like
they still need and have and want a chief, or maybe not want, whatever. Right. But like, there's still a guy that's in that chain of command, and us sitting here doing this does not help him, doesn't help you.
Right.
Like, what do we have to do to fix this? Right. And so, and all those are like teaching moments, and you can go through whatever you want. But again, it's one of those, it is frustrating. And we've dealt with, everybody's dealt, or at least all the chiefs I'm sure have dealt with that to some extent. But the frustrating part is like, if right? Because again, we talked about it a long time ago, but I guarantee like any first class could rank the Chiefs mess and probably get
easy
it
with the guarantees.
95%.
All right. You might get, no, and they would be right. No, I'm with you. You've said that before.
Yeah. But so like, my point is like, people aren't dumb, and they don't, not every person sitting there, like, my chief's the most amazing chief. And he's like the bottom P, right? Like, they know when they've got the bottom P chief.
Yeah.
But the sad reality, whatever you want to call it, is that division now has to kind of pick up some slack to help that person out. But also the rest of the Chiefs mess has to help step in and like help that person out and bring them up and teach them whatever they didn't know. Because again, like, making chief doesn't mean that you're good at making any rank in the Navy doesn't mean that you're good at that rank of doing that job. It just means that you did good enough at the previous rank.
Right. To be selected and fill that role. And that's what, like, I agree with the guy that was going hard in the paint saying that, like, what have the juniors done to help the guy out? But also, like, the Chiefs, I'd be like, I'd be on fire in that office about, like, anybody that's coming in there bashing that guy or talking crap about that. It's like, okay, what are you doing about it? Like, what are you doing about it? Because, like, I get it, but like, especially if he's not dumb, it's just like a leadership development issue, then start developing. Like, what are we doing about it? Because he might not be like, he might not get past the middle of the road MP, but like that, if that's a ceiling, get him there. You know what I mean? And then he'll be away, because if he's the bottom P right now and we get him to a middle of the road MP, that's a huge improvement. And it's a huge improvement for the division of sailors that are waiting down the hall for their chief. And that's what drives me nuts. It's like, get him to his ceiling. And then we can understand that his ceiling is lower than everyone else's, and that's fine. Not everybody's going to be a number one EP, and that's okay. But we need to get him to his ceiling so that they have the best chief they can possibly have.
Yeah, and that's a weird hard spot with it. But that's basically been our point to it. It's like, you can call him the bottom P, but like, how about we raise that risk a little bit,
do something about it. Like, I mean, even if he stays the bottom P, but we raise where the bottom, like, we raise the
raise
floor,
that risk, man.
Yeah, raise the floor of his potential to the ceiling, and maybe he doesn't leave the bottom P spot. But I guarantee, and see what I did there? I guarantee the sailors that he's leading are going to notice the change. They're going to notice that they have a better leader. Like, one of my best friends is in a mess where he feels like the culture of the mess, and especially like the leadership of the mess, don't value him, because it's like one of those, I'll talk to you in detail about it when we aren't recording, because I don't want to like put too much detail out there, but it's like one of those ones where it's not a tip of the spear operational mess. So it's like they get distracted by all of the extra stuff. And so if you're not doing all the extra stuff, it's like you're not contributing or whatever. And he's a guy that all he's focused on is his sailors and taking as good a care of them as he possibly can and making sure they have what they need and blah, blah, blah. And then going home to his family. And like, and it's not like he's not trying to be the best chief he can in that mess, but his idea of what that means is kind of different from what the culture of that mess and the leadership of that mess define it to mean. Well, and so he thinks he's valued low as far as like, if you're going to rank him right now, blah, blah, blah. But I bet you if those junior sailors ranked him, that he would be at the top. You know what I mean? Like, and I bet you he's the kind of guy that's a chief on the ship all the time, man. Like he's the chief that I would bet a stack of cash that sailors on that vessel are going to him instead of their own chief because he's more approachable and they like trust him and they get along with him and he's joking with them and he's doing all of those like human soft skills type things to build trust and rapport with all the sailors on that ship. I bet you a bunch of money that dude is the guy that they all go to and that they all trust.
That's back to what I was saying is like, just because say like your CMC or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. You're just random chief in a random command, and like your CMC does not agree with you, or you look at that person and you're just like, they're way off the mark, right? Yeah. And this is what they should be caring more about their people, or they should be caring more about this or whatever, right? Like, obviously, let's assume that you've voiced that and said, hey, like Cobb CMC, like you're way off the mark on this. This is what people care about, whatever. You keep getting blown off. A lot of people, I don't even know that a lot of people will change that, right? But a lot of people, I would think, at least get discouraged by that, to your point, and say, I just feel like I'm undervalued, right? And you might be undervalued at that command, but that doesn't mean that doesn't necessarily mean that you are wrong, right? Like, it's okay to be different from other people's mindsets. And that's where, like, I look back at it and I just found the solace in the people who thought the same, who still continued to progress through their career. And I'm like, okay, well, so I'm not crazy. Like, I might be the only person at this command, or I might not be the only person at the command, but I'm the only person voicing it or not, or whatever. But like, the point is, like, there's other people. Like, I guarantee that you're not alone with your thought process. And whether you think that you're the only person with that mindset or not, like, whether that's true or not, my point is, there are other people. Like, the Navy's big. There's more than just your mess. There's more than your command. I don't care if you're on the biggest carrier in the fleet. Like, there's more than that out there, right? And you're not the only person that feels that way. Look at any Facebook group. Look at the comment threads on any sort of Navy related comment thread, and there's the gamut of whatever, right? So like, but there are people that are successful in all of those things, and you can still be successful swimming upstream or being against the grain or whatever.
Maybe, because like I would say
to some extent,
you're
not
so
going to be the Mick Pond,
it depends on what you define success to be. Because I would say that those people, like, and my buddy was one of them for a while. Like, when he first got there, he felt like he was discouraged and he was just frustrated. I think he's kind of found his footing, and it's going better. Him and his SEL were bumping heads, but I would say like it's less like you might not be valued by the command, but I think you'd be valued at the command, like right where it's like the junior sailors, and I promise are valuing him and valuing the time he spends with them and the effort he puts in. But like, as far as rankings and
as
stuff,
a chief, though,
exactly. And I agree with you. And I would also say it's a small miracle that I'm a master chief right now, because there was times that I like that the last submarine where when I showed up, I was very vocally telling people, and a lot of people, that they were doing it wrong. And there are people that were in charge of ranking me and stuff. And like, maybe I got lucky. It was at the beginning of the time there. And so it was like my first eval is whatever, like I'm going to get a P anyway. So who cares? But I don't know, but it's a small miracle that of all the times that I've went into those situations and been vocally questioning the way that the organization is doing things and questioning leaders that are above me and pushing back all the time and whatever, that I wasn't just designated as like a, you know, a rabble rouser or an undesirable or something. And having it reflect in my evals and stuff.
But so look at it like this, right? Like somebody listening to that's made it this far into this episode, which I am always amazed if anybody listens to anything that I have to say
for this long. Yeah.
Well, the length, the garbage that I say, any of it. But if you're here, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm your biggest fan.
You the best.
But regardless, like people are listening to what you're saying, right? And I think a lot of the premise of what you put out is based on the fact that you are not the average chief of what you say, think, do, whatever, right? Like you see all the memes, you see all the standard comments, you see all the nonsense of like what a chief is, right? And like you clearly don't fit a lot of that. You fight back and against a lot of those things, right? Like you did that whole warped episode was basically talking about like what is everybody doing and why is this happening, right? Because that's not what you and I learned, and that's not whatever, right? So, but my point is that clearly, like you have hit the end of the rope, right? There's no E11 coming up anytime soon. You're not putting on E10 anytime soon.
Yeah.
So, like, you have clearly, at least by the Navy standards, been successful with this mindset. And if people go back to episode 1, they're going to hear the same stuff, you know, and
way worse.
That hasn't changed.
Way worse. In case anybody takes that suggestion, way worse audio.
But my point is like, right, the content hasn't changed though. Like your opinion
you're not
hasn't
wrong.
Really changed.
I mean, there's been evolution,
so
but no, I'm with you. I haven't the general.
You as a chief, right? Because like when I started listening, I listened to like old episodes, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, cool, you made senior chief, and then like now I know you, and then making chief, and like whatever, who cares? But it's. My point is that you've gone from as a chief putting this out, then a senior chief putting this out, now master chief putting this out. Like your baseline opinions and your thoughts has not changed. Where you've come from hasn't changed, but you've clearly been successful by the Navy standards with those opinions. So somebody listening to this looking for something different than what they normally hear from like the do as I say, not as I do. And I'm like the big fat angry chief and blah, blah, blah. Like that clearly, like that's not the only way is my point of like, and so when I look at all these other people that I'm like, oh, I agree with this guy, and they're a CMC or they're command senior chief or they're not a command whatever, but they're just a master chief. Like, and not just you, I know others that have rated master chiefs that made it recently. Right. And like, but I love that dude. But I look at those guys and I'm like, these are all people that like I agree with, and they're all very different with their mindsets and their approaches and their opinions, and I can learn like the tact and how to say things and how to do what and different approaches and whatever. But the general mindset of like, what's important? What do I care about? What should I be focused on? Those things are pretty baseline across all of you. And it's like, I'm not doing it wrong. Okay, like I'll put on rank when I put on rank, but like at least I look at it and I go, my mindset at least is a successful mindset. To somebody, right? So like I just need to be in the right place at the right time, because that's all 90% of advancement is, at least once you make chief, is the right place at the right time.
And that's kind of, and that's what part of why I was saying it's like a small miracle, because I also kept finding myself in like the circumstances that were required, and some of it like you could attribute some of it to me putting myself, like I definitely fought to be in those positions too, but especially being a cook, it's like there's a lot of stuff in order to make master chief without being a cob. Like it's, somebody brought that to my attention the other day about how abnormal that is, and I was just like, you're not wrong. And it was like kind of more validating than I feel like it would have been if I made it as a cop. So I was just like, oh wow, like that's interesting.
But that goes to like what I'm saying though, is that like you look at if somebody else, right? Like I don't feel like I've changed my opinion because I've started talking to you.
Yeah.
I've had the same stupid opinion since the first time we talked, but if you are doing as well as you are, all things considered, and have a similar opinion to me, I look at that as like it's my own satisfaction or my own like win. You know what I mean? And that's the weird spot of like, once you make chief, right? Everybody has that general, oh, you've made it, you're good, you're done, right? Which is never true.
Yeah.
Because then like now that you're chief, you're like, well, I'm not really a master chief till I'm a cob. And then it's like, well, I was a cob, but like
you can never
CMC.
There's no such thing as finished. But then
am I a force or a fleet? Yeah. There's no
finish line. Right? Yeah. Even there's then, I mean, I bet you those guys are looking at it like, now what? You know, like you got to think there's an identity crisis at some point along that progression where you're like, oh God, like now what do I do? You know, like how
like Russell Smith's like, cool, I guess I just got to go do golf tournaments with
or like
fancy polo tees,
work for some consulting thing or I don't know. Yeah, it's wild the way that, because that's what one of my best friend on this planet, he's my best man at the wedding, and we were at a dinner we had the night before, and he said, he goes, I know you well enough to know that you need the sense of purpose that you get from what you do in the military. So, and he was a guy he was on my first boat and then he got out. So he understands submarining in the Navy. And he goes, what are you going to do when you retire? Cause at the time I was like, I'm retiring soon. And, I was like, oh, I already do it. It's the podcast. Like I already have that thing that's going to fulfill that sense of purpose that I really would have had a hard time with that transition. And there's a little bit of it that's going to be, I'm sure it's not going to be easy, but I'm going to have the crutch of, well, I still get to do this. And also I can expand upon it and everything else, which I'm already working on. And so like, there's that part of it, but I feel like there's like, I've had friends that also like, you know, like they have a hard time finding purpose after the fact because they had a good portion of their identity tied up in it.
I just more meant like, that's how I think that's what's changed my focus of like, oh man, I didn't make it. And I look at it more as like, I'm super glad these people that I know did make it. Not like the people that I know that made it that I disagree with, I'm not like upset. But when I see somebody that I know and that I agree with, and that like, because the entire world, I think, is basically modeling yourself after what you think you should be. Or, you know what I mean? Like, and that's how, especially within the military, you find somebody that you liked and you go, I want to be that guy, or I want to be that girl, or that's what I want to do. And so when you see them succeed, if you're trying to do what they're doing, then in a weird way, you are also succeeding, if that makes any sense. So it's super convoluted and confusing, right? But like when the results came out and my wife was like, oh, sorry, you didn't make senior. And it's like, I know how the game is played. I knew it wasn't going to happen. Yeah. Like
I was bummed. I looked, but I also kind of knew because you've explained to me kind of where you're at and all the things. And
No. To a transfer P.
It's going to take a minute to.
Might as well send me to mast. But regardless, like seeing like some of the guys that I know that did make it, like people that were at the command, one of the guys, so in the weird line of succession, right? Like the big collateral duty that I have is as one of the watch bill coordinators for one of the watches. When I checked in, one guy had it, another guy had it for about a year, and then I took over for him. The two of them both put on a star this cycle.
Yeah.
And so I look at it, I'm like, sweet. Like those guys are doing good. And also like at personally knowing both of them, I'm like, these guys 100% deserved it.
Right.
They're both amazing at what they do. They're like, in my opinion, and apparently the same as the board, but like these guys, like I work with them personally. I have no idea who set the board. I didn't care enough to look back at who was there, but my point was like, I look at them and I'm like, those are the guys that I want to be like. They're the ones that are doing the right things in my head. They're the ones that are killing it. They're doing the right stuff. I like their opinions on things, and both of them got promoted. So I'm like, all right, well, if I'm on the same boat as them, I got to be doing something right. You know, even though it wasn't me, like, I don't care that it wasn't me. It's validation for where I'm at and what I'm thinking about and what I care about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, what I mean is like you making rank is validation for everybody that's listens to this, that's sitting around waiting like, wow, maybe I'm just listening to this one clown in a room full of weird old chief nonsense.
It's
who's
not
like,
weird. It's
was at the right place at the right time. And, you know, like, and they're listening to it like, wow, well, I agree with this guy, you know, like I may not be the popular guy in the command, or I may not have the popular opinion in the command, but I agree with this guy. But if you're listening to that and the whole time you're just like, well, yeah, but this clown's stuck at whatever rank he's at, you know?
Yeah.
But like, if you're still promoting, right, everybody else has got to look at that within the bounds of, you know, checking the right boxes and whatever else you have to do within the Navy. But like that mindset, it's like, it's validation. So like seeing somebody like you or the other people that I know that made rank, like it's exciting for me because I'm like, all right, I'm doing it right. Whatever it is, like somebody somewhere at a board somewhere said this guy's got it nailed, and that's all I'm looking for. Because then it's validation for me that I'm still doing something right. And it is what it is. Quotas will happen when they happen, or they won't, or I don't really care. But people that you identify with making rank at some point in a weird way is almost like you making rank.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's super confusing to explain it that way, but that's like when I don't know when it was, I don't have like a day in my career, but when that clicked with me, that like, oh, I'm super happy that guy made rank, because that's like, that's who I want to be, or like, that's who I think I am in my head, or like, so if they can do it, then like, I must be doing it right. And I'm good enough. I'll get there when I get there.
Hyped about like my buddies and stuff, but I was also competitive with other people. And so it was like where I knew like within my own community that like if somebody made rank and I didn't or whatever, and it would be like, you know what I mean? But like, don't get me wrong. There are people I know that I don't think have any business even wearing khakis to work that are, and that I don't ever want to see get promoted. But that's a difference. It's like, there's really good reasons, and it's the type of stuff that the system failed, whatever. It's a long story, but you know, and I've probably talked about it conceptually on the podcast, but as far as like even guys that there was a cycle where somebody didn't show up, like we didn't have a representative at the board for submariners. And so somebody got promoted that like there's, you know, like there's wickets that everybody's like, well, you got to have this if you're going to make whatever rank. And a guy made it that didn't have that because there wasn't representation there, but also he deserved it. It was just generally, if you don't have that one wicket, you're kind of not going to get past that stack of records to be able to make it. Right. So this guy was a guy that was frustrated having not made it for a few years, that he thought he should, but like it's pretty commonly known that, hey, if you're not qualified dive, or if you're not qualified chief of the watch, or if you don't have a LCPOC or whatever whatever the bullet is, right? And he didn't have the bullet that everybody kind of knows you need to have to make that rank, and he made it anyway. And so the whole community was on fire afterwards, and they were just like, what? And I'm looking at it like I was hyped because he's a dude that deserved to advance. And it was almost like we threw a monkey wrench in the system by accident to allow it to happen, because there were people that were checking those boxes that might not have been doing the other things correctly, because you and I both know, and I'm sure you agree as well, is like the eval system doesn't always work. where especially for cooks on a submarine, 0 people on that submarine, unless the cob is a cook when they exist. I know a handful of them are qualified to evaluate me in my job, unless we're talking about like leadership, collateral duties, and quals and whatever, which is all you get evaluated on a submarine generally, where it's like, you're not that guy, unless that guy is your rate, he's not qualified to evaluate you in your job, really. So if I'm doing a horrible job, and it's unique with cooks, LSs, probably yeomen, a couple others, I'm completely speculating there, but like for cooks, no one is going to call my cob and tell him that my inventory validity sucks, or that somebody came down and sanitation was terrible or whatever, unless it was like I was going to make the whole crew sick. No one is going to communicate to my chain of command that I suck at my job unless I catch an SMI. And even then, a lot of times the chain of command, if I'm doing everything they need, if I'm a 3-section watchstander and I'm doing all the collateral duties and I'm taking care of the cob and doing ACOB things and all that crap, I'm going to do well anyway. And I know people that have done well anyway, despite not doing well at their primary duty, which when you read the precepts and the convening letter, it says sustained superior performance at sea in leadership positions is your primary duty. So, I mean, what's the leadership position? Well, your primary duty is to be the leader of that division and make sure it's functioning. That's the funny
part. I was talking about that recently with when it says like for us, for making 8, it said above RISCA and sustained superior performance. And that's it. Right. And so I was joking, like one of the things, at least for, and now mind you, our ladder or ECP
is all crazy now because of the rating merger.
It does. The rating merger does not, we don't technically have one, but when you look at the combined ones of all of them, that's basically all it says. Aside from the qualifications, right? But I was when I started our comms LCPO course, I basically said, like, what is a good chief, right? Like you as a cook chief, theoretically, and I'd put money on it that like you could go be the torpedo man chief. You could do a whole tour as a TMC and I guarantee you that you would be fine.
Yeah.
You'd have to learn some new acronyms. You got to learn some new nonsense, right?
Ask like, for a lot of help.
But not in the way of
I'm not going to be a technical expert.
Leading a division. You won't be the technical expert, right? But my point is, like, as far as being a
leader,
chief
manager
of a division, that aspect of it, you do fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the way the at least our ladder, I didn't read everybody else's ladder because I don't really care what a sonar tech or I don't know, whatever, insert another rate is, because that's not what I am. But I would bet that they're probably not much different, that it just says like, be a good leader, right? Which has nothing to do with technical expertise. And I'm not trying to say that like you don't have to be, and I'm not trying to downplay that.
Right.
But my point is like being a good leader, also that's super subjective. And that's, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And that's kind of what I was trying to get at probably several times now of like, you look at what do you think a good leader is and does and who they are. You find one, you have like that image in your head of what they are. And if they're doing it right and they are promoting and they are successful and you're just trying to, copy, paste, I'm going to fake it till I make it. And I'm going to do what I think they would do. If they're getting promoted and you're trying to do the same thing, like just odds, everything in the Navy's a time game and a waiting game. But like, if you're there long enough at the right spot, like you're also going to make it doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't know. It was just very much like something about that made this cycle, even though I did not make it, again, did not expect to, but I was super happy at a lot of the names that I saw on the list. Like a lot of the guys that I saw was very much like, I'm so glad that person made it. Partially because I think they deserved it. And partially because in my head, it was like, I'm glad that, because I have talked to that person and I feel the same way they do. So if they can make it, then
it's
I
like
must not be too
validating
far off
that,
the
like,
mark.
okay, my behavior could lead me there. So that's awesome. Like, I don't need to like pretend I'm someone else or do all these other things or stomach things that I don't want to do, even though you do need to get your MTS.
But then on the flip side, right? Like, so I don't know if I told you or not, but the only reason I really hoped that I made
is so you wouldn't have to get your MTS
or next year is so that I could be like, nah, I'm not going to
just
do
that. Just
literally out of spite to bother you
and a few other. Yeah. Nope. You're getting that MTS. If I gotta come there and do your class evaluations myself, you're getting that damn MTS.
It's so, yeah.
I don't care.
I know. So like a prime example of the flip side of that, though, is that the success doesn't necessarily mean that they are right.
Right.
And this is totally subjective, but we have a quarterly meeting with the CO about every rate does about manning and the health of your rate, blah, blah, blah. And in case anybody's curious, the health of our rate is hot garbage at my command.
What?
Yeah, our 6-month outlook is 48%.
Oof. We were at like 67 to 75 at the A school when I was there, and that was brutal.
We got told 80% is the new 100%.
Oh my God, that's disgusting.
Be happy if you hit 80.
I will not be happy if I
half
had
of
80.
that.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm literally almost half that.
Yeah.
And just trying to stay afloat, right?
Yep.
Like as a rate at my command, we're literally just barely treading water.
Yeah.
And so when we went to go do our meeting with the CO, I said something about, like, I don't know, it's awkward, right? Because, like, again, they're all people. Every rank, every position, whatever. Everybody are just people.
Yeah.
They all have lives. They all got problems. They all got bills to pay. They all got to get dressed. They all wipe their ass when they go to the bathroom. They are what they are, right?
Yeah.
But the CO, like, he's still a full bird.
Right.
He's been a CO of a submarine.
Mm-hmm.
He's still here at like a major command. There's 2,500 people here. So like, he's not dumb, he's
right.
smart with what he says. But it's a little awkward and it can be very intimidating. And we're all sitting in this room. We go into his office and to go talk about manning. And I'm basically there to like walk in and be like, hey, well, here's my dumpster fire. And all, 6 of my guys are going to try to cover 34 jobs.
Right.
And wish me luck. But so like, I don't know, just trying to find some sort of weird icebreaker because that's who I am. And so I went in there and I made some joke about baseball because I love baseball. I also like football, but whatever. So I made some joke about baseball and our CO was like, he literally said, baseball is super boring.
It is. I agree.
And
it cannot totally be fine position. Like, yeah. I'd rather watch a 30 for 30 about something dramatic that happened and have them edit everything so I don't have to watch the whole game.
Dude, there's a 30 for 30 about, what's his name? Doc. It's very late where I'm at.
Yeah.
What's his name?
We can wrap up here in a second.
He threw a no-hitter.
Yeah.
While on acid.
Oh, wow. I need to watch that.
Yeah, and I'll find it. It's interesting.
Okay.
Anyways.
Yeah.
But he's like, baseball's boring. Yeah. And I was just kind of like, okay, well, this is awkward, right? Like that didn't work.
Yeah.
Swing and a miss. And he's like, if the pitcher is doing his job, then nothing happens. And if he's not doing his job, then he should be fired. And I was kind of like, okay. And in my head, I was just thinking like, that's a wild stance to have.
Yeah. So
that
clearly my not
extreme.
maintaining order depth on your submarine would have been a problem.
Right. And so like the first thing that went through my head was like, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And I assume it's like largely hyperbole, right?
Right.
But, and so of course, when he said that, I was like, well, what about the hitter? And he's like, well, the hitter should also be, if he's not batting 1,000, then he's not doing his job and he should be fired. And he's like, and it's impossible for a batter to be, every batter to be batting 1,000 and every pitcher to pitch a perfect game. So baseball is not it's a nonsensical sport.
Okay,
it's
nuclear engineer,
right.
Calm down, because the whole universe is nonsensical by that definition. So
100%, right?
Baby
and like
Jesus.
that was the Navy in me went like, oh my God, I hate 1120s. And then my second thought though was like, there's a whole, and he was obviously he was good at what he did. He was successful, right? But my thought was like, I am so glad I'm not on a boat with you.
Yeah.
Because even jokingly, right, that some part of you is thinking that this is true.
Yeah.
And I could care less if somebody likes baseball or not.
Right.
But it was just, shot in the dark. Talk about baseball.
Right.
Cool, you don't like it. Now I know for next quarter.
Yeah.
Do not bring up baseball. But it was just one of those like, that guy is a objectively navally successful person.
Yeah.
Right? He's a full bird captain.
Yeah.
In charge of a major command. And I may or may not agree with that dude being good at his job or not. I think he is, but I really do. Like outside of that, I think he really is good. But my point is more of like, just because that person's not, let's say that I completely disagree with what he's doing, just for argument's sake, because there's others that I do disagree with where they're at.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I'm wrong or that's the only way. And that's what I just keep getting at. Like there's other people though that are successful that do feel the way you do. Like there's more than one way to skin a cat. You can be successful in more than one way. I know people that got out as a chief who were like, everybody looked at him and said, this guy's an idiot, but their division just loved that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, this guy is amazing as my chief. He kills it for me. He does everything that I want. And that's what you're supposed to do. So are they, I don't know, the fact that they didn't put on Master Chief, does that make them not successful?
Oh, I feel like a lot of those guys that I've known have been the ones that have like fought back really hard in a way that the Navy was unwilling to accept, like where I'm not going to qualify that thing and I'm not going to do that, or they'd like, I'm not going to do your dumb collateral duties. Yeah, well, kind of, yeah. But I mean, honestly, though, the only reason I'm saying that is because that will hurt you at a selection board. And so
100% it will.
But it's one of those things that it's like, you just do it. And but those guys wouldn't do it. And it applied to a ton of things, and also said things and did things they probably shouldn't have to the upper chain of command because they just didn't care. Yeah. But they took care of their division. And so, yeah, I mean, you could their division objectively thought they were a good chief because they were to them. Yeah. But then, the Navy's definition.
If that's your job though.
Yeah.
Then
but the Navy,
a good chief?
The Navy defines it as more than that. Like, yes, I agree with you that that's their main job, but the Navy defines it as more than that. All right. So
no, I get it.
One more question, and people can't see this because we're doing video, but I'm not recording the video, and I'm obviously not publishing the video, but Bob has been playing with a horsehair boot brush the entire podcast. And I want to know why. Like literally flipping it over in his hands, caressing it, like doing all kinds of weirds the whole time.
So it has become a fidget spinner because I'm sitting here.
Just because it's there on the desk, yeah.
Yep. What's funny is that I have brushed more non-naval boots with this than I have.
I was going to say, and doesn't look like there's polish all over it either, so I'm like, what's going on there? Not that you're probably wearing black boots, but...
I am not wearing black boots, actually, at work. I wear the tan boots.
I got the Oakley ones now because I'm a communist, apparently. I finally caved in. It was just like I had the Rocky Company ones, and I cleaned them, and then I could never waterproof them again. Yeah, I can never waterproof them appropriately again. So every time I'd get any drop of water, which where I live is ridiculous, the watermark would never go away. So my boots look like crap and it's driving me nuts. And I still can't figure out how to get the stupid kit to work where I clean the suede and waterproof it again. So I finally just lost my mind and ordered those Oakley boots because they're super comfortable. And I'm a Mass Chief now.
So comfortable.
They're amazing. But yeah.
So in my old age, one of the things my grandfather, who died when I was 3, so I literally do not know this guy. One of the things that he always said when everybody would say like, "Oh, what do you want for your birthday or Christmas or whatever?" Right? His answer was shoes that fit. Right, which is like a very, very simplified insight to my life of I'm a very practical, just make this thing work.
Yeah.
And that's what I want.
Awesome.
Kind of person, right? So I have at my last command, we were very rough on our shoe wear, our footwear, and but it didn't matter what it was because we didn't wear a uniform most of the time. And so one of the things that I did was I went and bought a pair of Red Wings because there's a Red Wing store in town.
Gotcha.
And I beat the daylights out of those things, and I still have them.
Yeah. And you can get them like fixed and stuff, can't you? Like, don't they have like a warranty or something?
No, well, they need to get resold. But outside of that, they're as good as a 6-year-old boot can be that I beat the daylights out of.
Yeah.
I have those. I have 2 other pairs. So I have a pair of Red Wing Iron Rangers because I am a fancy snob like that. And they're overly expensive, but I was able to justify it to the wife because I said, hey, if I can get 6 years out of these, they've got to be better than a pair of Vans.
Yeah.
Which is what I'm wearing right now.
Yeah.
Those are my 2 options. Like overly expensive
or
boots
$30
or
Vans.
Yeah.
I wear a lot of Vans.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of that waffle sole.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I take care of my Red Wings that I have, mostly my Iron Rangers because they just look so good.
Yeah.
Look them up.
I will.
But
now.
anyways,
my wife has a pair, but I don't know what kind they are.
Man, your wife is so much cooler than you.
I know. I have a pair of like the ones I wanted there, and this is so off topic, but like I got some Danner boots that are like these crazy waterproof insulated hiking boots with zippers on the side, and like they got the red laces, and I love them. They're so dope.
I got issued Danners.
Yeah.
And they were great, but they were half size too small.
Oh, mine are perfect.
They were amazing for like 20 minutes.
They're so comfortable.
And then it was just pure foot pain.
Oh yeah.
No, they were super nice boots. They do. Yeah. Danner does have some.
All right,
nice
no one
boots.
cares about any of this except us, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up, man, and just hit stop, and then we can talk about whatever. Buy some Red Wings, kids. All right. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I always love talking to Chief Bob, and it always goes way longer than it probably should. So I actually had to kick him off the call at the very end because he's on the East Coast, and it was super late, and he had to go to work the next day, and I didn't. So, but yeah, like, I mean, this is the one series that hasn't wavered just because I enjoy talking to him so much. So there's that. Coming up, a lot of different stuff. I'm going to endeavor to do what Chief Andrew was doing because he's busy now. If you didn't know, he's getting commissioned. He got picked up for LDO. So he's off to school and all this other stuff. So he's going to be busy for a while. So I'm going to attempt to do a Foundations episode in the same vein as him. I probably won't do as good of a job, but I'm going to try. And then some other cool stuff coming up, just interviews with some people and yeah, same old, and some new stuff too. If you need anything from us, hit us up. Don't give up the shit podcast at gmail.com. You can Facebook message us, Don't Give Up the Shit Podcast, or you can DM us on Instagram or Reddit or Discord now. Hit us up at DGUTS or just DGUTS Podcast on whatever the platform you choose. Also, if you would be so kind, and I should always put this at the beginning and I never remember, like, review, subscribe on all the platforms for all the things. So like all the social media platforms, iTunes, it's always awesome when we get reviews on there. stuff like that. Share the content on social media. It helps us get it to the people that need it. And that's it. That's what I got for you today. Thank you so much for listening, and don't give up the ship.